The difference between a business leader and a political decision maker is not about who has more power. It is about where that power comes from. I once had the chance to meet two people who truly understood influence. One was the founder of a major construction company. His company handled large infrastructure projects across several states. He had thousands of employees working under him and managed hundreds of millions of dollars in annual contracts. The other was a senior government official responsible for regional development decisions. He did not run a company. He did not control a market. But one decision from him could determine whether a major project moved forward or stayed frozen for years. Both of them were powerful people, but their presence was completely different. The construction CEO carried one message everywhere he went: I know how to win. I once watched him negotiate with the vice president of a real estate company. They were discussing a major development project. The real estate company tried to push the price down because they believed the contractor needed the deal. The CEO listened quietly. Then he picked up his coffee cup, put it down hard on the table, and said, "If you want another contractor, go find one. My team already has 3 other projects waiting. I do not need this contract." The room became silent. The real estate executive clearly did not expect that reaction. But in the end, they signed the deal at the original price. Many people would look at that moment and think, that CEO was just aggressive. But people who understand business know something deeper was happening. He was not showing anger. He was showing leverage. In any negotiation, the weakest position is needing the other side more than they need you. The moment someone knows you have no alternatives, they know they can keep pushing your limits. But when you have options, when you have resources, when you can walk away, the entire balance of power changes. That is where a business person's confidence comes from. Not from being loud, not from acting intimidating, but from knowing there is strength behind every decision. In the business world, respect is often created by visible capability. If people cannot see your strength, they assume you do not have it. If you never show that you can leave the table, others will keep lowering your value. But there is something many people misunderstand. They copy the attitude without building the foundation. They learn how to speak aggressively. They learn how to act confident. But they do not have the company. They do not have the cash flow. They do not have the team. That is not confidence. That is performance. A truly powerful person is not someone who threatens to walk away. It is someone who can actually afford to walk away, because they have built enough strength that losing one opportunity will not destroy them. Successful entrepreneurs understand one thing: power comes from having alternatives. A small business with one customer has no negotiating power. A company with hundreds of customers can set its own terms. A company with strong suppliers, talented employees, and a trusted brand becomes difficult to replace. That is why great business leaders spend years building resources. They are not just trying to make more money. They are building a position where other people must consider their value. Because once you become difficult to replace, people treat you differently. Your influence increases, your choices increase, and your confidence becomes natural. That is why high-level entrepreneurs are obsessed with scale. They build networks. They build systems. They build reputation. They build things that create leverage. Because in the business world, the person with the stronger position usually controls the conversation. The person with fewer options usually accepts the conditions. When your position becomes weak, others will notice immediately. Markets are competitive. They constantly test who has real strength and who is only pretending. At that time, I thought this was what a true fighter looked like, until I met another kind of powerful person. And I realized there are completely different types of people who can control outcomes. The second person operated by a completely different set of rules. The government official I mentioned earlier showed me something I never expected. A business owner once approached him about getting approval for a large commercial development. If the project succeeded, the company could potentially make tens of millions of dollars. Most people would assume the official would immediately think about the opportunity But his first reaction was completely different. He did not ask, "What can I get from this?" He asked, "What exactly are you planning to build?" The businessman said, "A large shopping and entertainment complex." The official continued asking questions. "How much capital do you have available? How long can your company survive if the project goes over budget? Who is responsible for construction? Do you have an experienced operating team? Are there any regulatory issues that could appear later?" The businessman was confused. He asked, "Why are you asking all of this? Doesn't this just need approval?" The official smiled and said, "I can help you move a project forward, but I cannot help you survive the consequences if the foundation is weak, if construction starts and your financing collapses, if regulators discover problems later, if the project creates a public issue. The decision will come back to everyone involved, so before you ask for support, make sure every part of your plan can survive the future." After that conversation, the official said something that stayed with me. A business person usually looks at the reward first. A responsible decision maker has to look at the risk first. That sentence explains the biggest difference between these two worlds. Entrepreneurs operate in uncertainty. Their job is to find opportunities inside chaos. They have to move faster than competitors. They have to recognize trends before everyone else. Because in business, a missed opportunity can disappear forever. But people who manage public systems operate under a different kind of pressure. They are not only asking, "Can this work?" They are asking, "What happens if it fails? Who will be affected? What problems will appear later? What consequences will remain years from now?" A business leader may focus on creating growth. A decision maker often focuses on preventing damage. One is trying to create possibilities. The other is trying to control uncertainty. Neither approach is better. They are simply designed for different responsibilities. This is why many successful entrepreneurs change completely after their companies grow. At the beginning, a founder needs courage. They need to take risks. They need to make decisions with limited information. Because if they wait for perfect conditions, someone else will take the opportunity first. But when the company becomes large, the same aggressive mindset can become dangerous. A founder who once risked everything with 10 employees cannot continue making the same decisions when 10,000 employees depend on them. The scale of responsibility changes the way you think. A small mistake in a small company may only affect the owner. A mistake in a large organization can affect employees, partners, customers, and entire communities. That is why experienced leaders become more careful, not because they become weaker, but because the consequences become bigger. The higher someone climbs, the less room they have for careless decisions. People often misunderstand powerful decision makers. They think, why don't they move faster? Why don't they just make the obvious choice? But people at the top are rarely dealing with simple problems. They are managing complex systems. Every decision creates another reaction. Every action creates another responsibility. So they learn to think several steps ahead. They ask questions most people never consider. If we do this today, what happens 3 years from now? Will this create a bigger problem later? Will someone have to fix this decision in the future? That is why truly powerful people often speak less. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand that words have consequences. An ordinary person can say something and move on. A person with influence can say one sentence and change other people's decisions. The higher the position, the more carefully they choose their words. Real power is not always visible. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is the quietest one, because their confidence does not come from saying, "I can make anything happen." It comes from knowing, "There are things I will never do." That is a different level of control. Many young people study successful entrepreneurs. They study their courage, their confidence, their ability to take risks. But when people reach higher levels, the game changes. The competition is no longer about courage. It becomes about judgment, knowing when to attack, knowing when to protect, Knowing when to show strength. Knowing when to stay silent. That is the difference between ambition and leadership. For a long time, I thought these two people would never truly understand each other. One lived in the world of competition and deals. The other lived in the world of systems and responsibility. Then one day, they ended up sitting at the same dinner table. The CEO had a few drinks and joked with the official. "You government people have it easy. You do not have to fight for customers. You do not worry about payroll. Your paycheck arrives every month." The official put down his glass, looked at him, and said, "You think it is easy because you only see what happens on the surface. When I wake up every morning, the first thing I think about is whether today's decision will create tomorrow's problem. When you wake up, you think about how much money you can make today. We are not playing the same game." The CEO became quiet. The official continued, "You can make a bad business decision, lose money, close one company, and start again somewhere else. You can rebuild. But when my decision is wrong, the consequences do not disappear. Because my choices affect more than myself, they affect a system that people depend on." That dinner became very quiet after that. And sitting there, I finally understood the difference. The foundation of business is offense. The foundation of responsibility is defense. Entrepreneurs search for opportunities. Decision makers search for hidden risks. Entrepreneurs ask, "How much can we gain?" Responsible leaders ask, "What happens if everything goes wrong?" One creates growth. The other protects stability. A business person may be willing to gamble on themselves. A person responsible for a larger system cannot gamble the same way. This does not mean one side is smarter. It means they carry different weights. A founder can risk personal success. A leader responsible for thousands of people has to consider everyone affected by that risk. That is why different people can look at the same situation and reach completely different conclusions. An entrepreneur sees a market opportunity. A manager sees operational challenges. An investor sees potential returns. A regulator sees possible consequences. The difference is not intelligence. The difference is perspective. But thinking like a business person or thinking like a decision maker is not about choosing one side forever. The smartest people know how to switch between both systems. Because different stages of life require different ways of thinking. When you are building something from nothing, you need the mindset of an entrepreneur. You need ambition. You need speed. You need the courage to make decisions before everything is clear. If you wait until every risk disappears, you will never start anything meaningful. Every successful company began with someone willing to step into uncertainty. Someone who believed in an idea before the market proved it. Someone who accepted that failure was possible. But once you have built something valuable, once you have employees, customers, a reputation, and responsibilities, you must learn a different way of thinking. You have to become more like a long-term strategist. You stop asking only, "How fast can we grow?" and start asking, "How do we survive the next 10 years? How do we protect what we built? How do we avoid mistakes that cannot be reversed?" A small company can survive because it moves quickly. A large company survives because it creates stability. A small boat can change direction instantly. A large ship needs a careful plan before turning. Many companies fail because their leaders never make this transition. They become successful using aggressive instincts. Then they continue using the same instincts after success arrives. The mindset that created the company becomes the mindset that destroys it. A founder who takes big risks in the beginning may look like a genius. But the same behavior with thousands of employees depending on him can become reckless. Growth requires courage, but survival requires discipline. The same principle applies outside business. If you want to rise inside any organization, you need to understand timing. Early in your career, you need to prove yourself. You need results. You need to take responsibility. You need to show that you can solve difficult problems. Nobody trusts someone with greater responsibility if they have never demonstrated ability. But as your position increases, the skill that matters changes. You no longer need to constantly prove that you are the smartest person in the room. You need to prove that you can keep the entire room stable. The higher the position, the less important personal victory becomes. And the more important long-term stability becomes. The biggest mistake people make is using the wrong mindset in the wrong situation. Some people try to build businesses with a risk avoidance mindset. They analyze forever. They fear every possible failure. They wait until competitors have already moved. Eventually, they lose because they never took the first step. Other people gain power and success, then start believing they are unstoppable. They rely only on confidence. They ignore warnings. They believe every problem can be solved by force or influence. Eventually, one wrong decision can destroy years of progress. The most dangerous people are not those who take risks. They are those who no longer understand the difference between calculated risk and reckless behavior. True leaders know the difference. They know when to move aggressively and when to slow down. They know when to fight and when to negotiate. They know when to speak. And when silence creates more power, real influence is not about controlling everything. It is about understanding the situation you are in and choosing the right strategy for that situation. The essence of power is not how many resources you control. It is whether you understand how to use those resources. A person can have money and still make poor decisions. A person can have authority and still lose control. Because resources alone do not create leadership. Judgment does. The strongest people are not always the ones who push forward the hardest. They are the ones who understand when pushing forward is the right move, and when protecting what they already built is the smarter move. A great entrepreneur needs the courage to attack. A great leader needs the wisdom to defend. The highest level is not becoming only a fighter, and it is not becoming only a protector. It is mastering both. Knowing when to act like an entrepreneur. Knowing when to think like a strategist. Knowing when to create opportunities. Knowing when to prevent disasters. Because if you do not understand what game you are playing, even the best cards in your hand can eventually be wasted. The people who truly win are not always the people with the strongest cards. They are the people who know exactly when and how to play them.